Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the September 22nd, 2022 City of Roseville Planning Commission meeting. Please put all of your electronic devices on silent at this time. Agendas are available at the end of the staff table. If you plan to speak at tonight's meeting, please complete a blue speaker card and return it to the staff table. As a reminder, Planning Commission meetings are broadcast live and replayed throughout the week on Consolidated Communications and Comcast. I will now call the meeting to order. Lupe, can we please have a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Brashears. Commissioner Jensen is absent. Excused. Commissioner Hagenjos.
Here.
Commissioner Pryor.
Here.
Commissioner Randolph.
Here.
Vice Chair Covington.
Here.
And Chair Martin.
Here. Commissioner Hagenjos, can you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Lupe, can we please begin staff introductions?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. Lupe Nelson, Recording Secretary.
Good evening, Commissioners. Joe Speaker, Assistant City Attorney.
Good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. Derek Ogden, Senior Planner.
Good evening, Commissioners. Scarlett Marr, Associate Planner.
Good evening, Commissioners. Shelby Maples, Associate Planner.
And good evening, Matt Todd, Principal Engineer.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the public comment. The public comment is a period in time for anyone who would like to address the Commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the Commission, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the Commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next up is the consent calendar. So the consent calendar consists of routine items that may be approved under one motion as recommended in staff reports. However, each item may be considered separately upon a request by the audience, Planning Commission, or staff. Tonight's consent calendar consists of 2 items. Item 5.1, the minutes from September 8th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. And then item 5.2, the Sierra Vista Specific Plan Parcel WB-41, Verado 2 Design Review Permit for residential subdivision located at 3301 Pleasant Grove Boulevard. For the record, file number PL22-0159. Is there anyone on the Commission or in the audience who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar for separate discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as listed?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Brashears and seconded by Commissioner Pryor. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hagenjos.
Yes.
Commissioner Pryor.
Yes.
Commissioner Brashears.
Yes.
Vice Chair Covington.
Yes.
Commissioner Randolph.
Yes.
And Chair Martin.
Yes. The motion is approved. There's a 10-day appeal period for item 5.2. So next on the agenda is request presentations. Before we begin, I want to review the meeting procedures. First, we will hear the staff presentation. Then I will take questions from the Commission. Then I will open up the public hearing. The applicant will make a presentation. Then I will open the public comment, and public will have an opportunity to speak. Then I will close the public comment. The applicant will be given an opportunity to provide a rebuttal. Then I will close the public hearing, and then the Commission may ask questions of staff. And finally, the Commission will consider the item and make a decision based upon the information provided in the report from staff and the testimony presented during tonight's hearings. Item 6.1 is a request for a tree permit for 814 Joanne Lane. For the record, file numbers PL22-0122. Shelby, may we have your presentation, please?
Yes, you may. Good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. My name is Shelby Maples, Associate Planner, and I have a presentation for you on the I-80 Widening Tree Permit Project. The California Department of Transportation, in conjunction with the Federal Highway Administration, Placer County Transportation Planning PCTPA, Placer County, Rockland, and Roseville propose improvements along Interstate 80 between State Route 65 and Rockland Road in the city of Rockland, and between 1,000 feet east of Douglas Boulevard and Riverside Avenue in Roseville. The project extent is shown here in green, and that's for the portion within the city of Roseville. So while the project before you this evening is the tree permit, I did want to provide some additional background on the freeway improvement project. The project known as the I-80 Auxiliary Lanes Project will widen I-80 within Roseville by adding a fifth lane on the westbound side of the freeway. And this project also includes realignment and improvements of the Douglas Boulevard and Riverside Avenue ramps to accommodate the fifth lane, as well as reconstruction and extension of sound walls along the freeway. And the length of the project area is approximately 2.75 miles. I also wanted to give a quick summary of the overall Auxiliary Lanes project timeline, as this has been in process for many years. The project design began in 2014, and there were a series of public workshops and meetings spanning from October of 2014 to April 2016. PCTPA has a webpage that's dedicated to the project, and that includes the more detailed project timeline, as well as meeting records and materials. In addition, there was an initial study and mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for the Auxiliary Lanes project, which includes a public meeting that reviewed the document, and there are public comments on that document that are included with the initial study that's attached to your staff report. Final design and right-of-way acquisition began in 2018, and project construction is expected to begin next year and will last approximately 2 years. Prior to beginning construction, the project is required to implement mitigation measures as identified in that mitigated negative declaration. So in order to comply with the mitigation measures for tree removal, the project is required to obtain a tree permit with the City of Roseville, consistent with our tree preservation ordinance. So according to the tree survey that was prepared in March of 2022, 326 trees will be removed within the City of Roseville limits, including 283 protected oak trees. So this requires mitigation for a total of 2,999 inches of oak tree. As previously mentioned, PCTPA and its partners have completed an extensive review, and the public outreach that has been completed since the project's inception in 2014, and it's found that there's compelling public need for the project. It'll improve safety and traffic congestion on the 80. The conditions of approval ensure protection of the trees that will remain by requiring protective fencing. And while the tree ordinance generally prioritizes on-site replacement planting as the preferred method of mitigation, the proposed project does take place on state right-of-way where there's limited room for tree planting. Therefore, payment of in-lieu fee mitigation is requested. For the tree permit, early notice of the project and notice of the Planning Commission hearing were posted on the Arcona webpage, as well as mailed to neighbors and property owners within 300 feet of the project. Staff did speak to one individual who was interested in the overall project timeline, but there were no other comments received from the public. The overall project is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, and as previously mentioned, the initial study mitigated negative declaration for the I-80 Auxiliary Lands project was prepared. The activities of the tree permit fall within the scope of what was evaluated by the documents, so there is no additional environmental documentation required. Approval of the proposed tree permit would implement the required mitigation for the overall project. So as the responsible agency for the project, the Planning Commission will consider the mitigated negative declaration prior to taking action on the tree permit. I'd also like to note that there is a correction for condition number 21. According to the tree ordinance, a tree permit will either expire concurrently with other entitlements, or it's effective for 6 months with the possibility of a 6-month extension. So as there are no other city entitlements with this project, the 6-month expiration is appropriate, and the updated conditions shown here. In conclusion, the project meets the required findings for a tree permit in that it will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, and appropriate mitigation measures are included with the project. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission consider the mitigated negative declaration for the I-80 Auxiliary Lanes project and adopt the findings of fact and approve the tree permit subject to the 21 conditions of approval, including modified condition number 21. Thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Shelby. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff at this time?
I just have one. The in lieu payment, do we have an idea in terms of what that amount is?
Yes, so it is $118 an inch, and I did the math for you. Let me see. So that should total $353,882.
Okay. And when those funds are paid in, what are they used for?
So they go into the Native Oak Tree Fund, and that is the city's urban forestry program. They do a replanting program in some of the open space areas of the city or in other locations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I
Any
ask
other
a
questions,
question?
Jeff?
Would it be possible to use that money for native tree planting in the general vicinity of the trees that are being removed? For example, on Riverside Avenue, I think we recently voted to change a plot to open space in the Dry Creek area. Could some of these funds be used for tree planting in that general area?
Yeah, Commissioner Pryor, I think what you're referencing is the Dry Creek Greenway Trailhead project. So that will be a parking area, and there will be some kind of native areas that they can, revegetate there. We can, certainly look at maybe revising a condition to sort of talk about placing consideration towards that, if that's the commission's desire.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pryor. Any other questions, commissioners? No. Nope, okay. So then I will now open the public hearing. I'd like to invite the project representative for this item to address the commission, please.
Good evening, members of, is this on? Speak. Good evening, members of the City Planning Commission for Roseville. My name is David Melko. I'm the Placer County representative from the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and with me tonight is my environmental specialist, Zach Liptak from Dock and Engineering. We don't really have a formal presentation. Shelby has covered the project very well, and we're here to answer any questions of the commission and or the public. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, David. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? No. Okay, thank you. I'll now open the public comment period. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item?
I'll fill in those afterwards. Hi, my name is Derek Pell. I live here in Roseville at 175 Park Drive. I'm here to oppose this. I think the year is 2022. We're in the middle of an ever-evolving climate disaster. We're talking about expanding a freeway. Expanding a freeway to relieve congestion is a bad idea. It will not happen. Look at LA. They have freeways everywhere. They're full all the time. 5 lanes, 10 lanes, doesn't matter. Expand the freeway, gets full still. Induced demand means that adding a lane doesn't really affect congestion in the long run. It might in the design year, but it doesn't now. More lanes, more vehicle miles traveled. More vehicle miles traveled, worse for the environment. My son is less than 2. I would like to see him live a full, happy life, but, frankly, I'm not really sure with the way the world is going. I don't really like 115 degrees heat. I don't think you do either. I don't really like massive flooding and, knocking out Puerto Rico's electricity system. I don't think you do either. I think Caltrans and Placer County should probably be ashamed of promoting a freeway expansion. I don't think that's a good idea. And I think you, as the responsible agency, I think you should consider that when you look at this tree permit. It's a lot of trees. Trees are good. Hopefully $300,000 can better plant a hell of a lot of trees. Because they're not going to be nearly as big as the ones they're taking down. But long term, expanding freeways is not a good idea. If you want to spend money on other ways of transportation that don't involve one person in a huge car trying to get to Sacramento in traffic. It's not a good idea. I'd ask you to please reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else who would like to make any more comments? Nope. Okay. I will now close the public comment period. Are there any additional questions from the commission to the applicant at this time? No? Okay, I will now close the public hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion on this item?
Chair, before we make a motion, could we ask staff maybe to...
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, let's...
come up with a
Yeah.
modified condition for the monies that are coming from the tree removal,
Yeah,
possible?
that
Yeah.
could be part of,
So I think to address Commissioner's prior concern, I would just add on to condition number 4, that consideration shall be given to providing on-site plantings within the Dry Creek Trailhead on Riverside Avenue with the project's mitigation funds.
And if I could just add to that too, because the fee that is charged has with it obviously parameters for how the fee can be utilized and the nexus for that. So I would just add to that, subject to the parameters within that, so that understanding what your objective is, but understanding that we can't just allocate a fee somewhere if it's contrary, which I'm unaware of it being contrary to that fee, but just to have that little caveat in there. Yeah.
okay. So then, with the comment of adding the verbiage to item 4, then I will go ahead and restate that. We'll close the public hearing, and would anybody like to make a motion? So in your motion can, if you wanted to make a motion, you could add on to his comment, plus the revision to the other.
Yeah, I think we would just
items.
say, to make the motion in addition to the revised condition number
Correct.
4.
Yep,
And 21.
21, yes. Yep. So would anybody like to make a motion on this item, given the discussion we've had, or would anybody like to have any more discussion with staff?
I'll make a motion. Recommend that the Planning Commission take the following actions. Consider the mitigated negative declaration for the I-80 Auxiliary Lanes project, and adopt the 2 findings of fact and approve the tree permit subject to 21 conditions of approval, but with the
Condition number 4
Condition,
modifications.
revision,
And
modification.
the date revisions on item
21.
21.
21, yep. Exactly.
I'll second that.
Okay. Great. Commissioner Brashears?
Could I get a clarification on the wording of the revised condition number 4?
Sure, we'll take a pause before we do a motion, and since we have a motion currently with a second, and if we could just expand on the item 4 verbiage.
So I think the intent is to use the funds that you guys are proposing in order to do plantings on the city's property potentially. So we're giving consideration to that. So my proposed condition was consideration shall be given to providing on-site plantings within the Dry Creek Trailhead on Riverside Avenue with the project's mitigation funds. Understanding that those funds won't all be allocated toward that project. It's not a big enough site to do all the replantings, but within that parking area, we could provide some trees with the mitigation funds. I think the county's obligation would be just to provide the funds.
Okay,
as
that's,
specified.
I just want to get a clarification on that we didn't, our project
There
all
will
of a
be no
sudden didn't
obligation
extend to
from
Dry
the
Creek,
county.
and all of a sudden we were in a planning program.
No.
Well, there's
Okay,
no,
all right.
no
That-
additional, yeah. Does that make it clear? then?
Yes,
Okay.
very
great.
much so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the item. We have Commissioner Brashears has made a motion, and Commissioner Hagen-Jost has seconded the motion. Could we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Pryor?
Yes.
Commissioner Randolph?
Yes.
Vice Chair Covington?
Yes.
Commissioner Hagen-Jost?
Yes.
Commissioner Brashears?
Yes.
And Chair Martin?
Yes. The motion is approved. There's a 10-day appeal period for this item. Thank you. Next item is 6.2. It's a request for a major project permit Stage 1 modification and major project permit Stage 2 for 2200 Freedom Way. For the record, the file number is PL 22-0101. Escarlett, can we have your presentation, please?
Yes, good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. My name is Scarlett Marr, and I'm here this evening to present to you the Blue Oaks Commerce Center project.
So
Project site is located within the previously approved Blue Oaks Commerce Center development, which encompasses approximately 49 acres of developed and mostly undeveloped land. The center is bounded by Blue Oaks Boulevard to the north, Washington Boulevard to the east, existing industrial users to the south, and Industrial Avenue to the west. The center was approved through the major project permit process in 2010. The MPP Stage 1 approved the building footprint, which did include some light industrial buildings as well as commercial and office buildings. A tentative subdivision map was also approved concurrent with the MPP to subdivide the property into 8 parcels. And in 2014, the MPP Stage 1 modification and an MPP Stage 2 was approved for the construction of the FBI building, as you can see on the bottom right-hand side corner of the parcel. The proposed project before you this evening is located on 2 parcels as illustrated in red on the screen, and this would allow the construction of 4 industrial buildings, 2 on each parcel. Next slide, please. The MPP Stage 1 modification would change the original site plan, which is shown on the left-hand side of the screen. The proposed changes would rearrange the layout of the buildings, reduce the number of buildings from 10 to 4, and increase the total square footage by approximately 50,000 square feet. The site will be developed, as previously mentioned, with 4 industrial buildings, as outlined in blue on the right-hand side of the screen, with some surface parking, some landscaping, and some lighting improvements as well. The 2 snapshots on the screen show each parcel with their respective proposed buildings. Building D on the northern parcel will be set back approximately 120 feet from Blue Oaks Boulevard, with a front average setback of 100 feet. The project will comply with the building setbacks and the landscape corridor setbacks as outlined in the North Roseville Area Design Guidelines, with the small exception of the parking stall encroachment, which was discussed in the staff report. Loading docks are also proposed at the rear of each building, which will be screened from public view, and additional screening will be provided at the corners of each building through the use of evergreen trees that will once again screen the loading docks from public street view. The project will provide 822 parking spaces, which does exceed the zoning ordinance parking requirement. And lastly, the northern parcel driveway along Industrial Avenue will be required to restrict inbound and outbound movements to right-ins and right-outs only, as recommended by the traffic study. So in addition to the MPP Stage 1 application, an MPP Stage 2 is being requested. The MPP Stage 2 would establish the design and colors of the proposed buildings, and as shown on the screen, the project buildings are designed as concrete tilt-up with architectural features like metal cornices, sill beam accents over the windows, and canopies at the entries. The building height will vary between 35 feet and 43 feet tall, and the proposed color palette, as you see on your screen, is similar to other warehouse buildings in the city that use a color scheme typically of white and gray. Overall, the proposed buildings are similar to the previously approved buildings, and the buildings are consistent with the North Roseville Area Design Guidelines as well as the Community Design Guidelines. Landscaping for the center was approved through the original MPP Stage 1. The project will comply with the landscape corridor setbacks along Blue Oaks Boulevard and Industrial Avenue. The project landscape in the parking lot will also meet the 50% minimum parking lot shading requirement as required in the Community Design Guidelines. And overall, the landscape plan is consistent with the plant palette that was previously approved through the MPP Stage 1, and it complies with the North Roseville Area Design Guidelines and the Community Design Guidelines. Early notification of the project was posted on the Roseville Coalition of Neighborhoods Association's website, and the public hearing notice was mailed to properties within 300 feet of the project site, and the notice was also published in the Roseville Press Tribune and the Arcona website again. In regards to CEQA, an addendum to the Blue Oaks Commerce Center initial study mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project. The addendum did evaluate the impacts of the development of the project and found it substantially consistent with the previously evaluated project, and no new effects would be expected to occur from this project. In conclusion, staff finds that the proposed modifications are substantially consistent with the intent of the original approval, and the project is consistent with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, the North Roseville Area Design Guidelines, and the Community Design Guidelines. Therefore, staff does recommend the Planning Commission consider the addendum and adopt the required findings of fact and approve the MPP Stage 1 modification and the MPP Stage 2 subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This does conclude my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Scarlett. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff?
I just had a couple of questions on just anticipated flow of traffic in and out of the site. I know you mentioned right out, right in. Is that for, was that for all the entrances? Or just
No.
on Fidelity and Freedom?
No, this would only be applicable to the northern driveway along Industrial Avenue on the northern parcel.
On Industrial, the northern?
Left side.
Just the one, okay. So then, and I'm assuming, I mean, it's industrial, so there's going to be anticipated truck traffic and plus parking for maybe 800 potential vehicles. And it might be easier to pull up the site plan. I just want to kind of think through the traffic flow here.
Slide 3 or 4.
So would we anticipate, if trucks are leaving the site and they're trying to access Highway 65, that would occur mainly down Freedom Way to Washington, and then a left-hand turn at Washington to access Blue Oaks and 65 there?
There are a couple ways. First, you can access it through Freedom Way at Washington, or it's Fidelity that connects into Blue Oaks.
So they could go left on Fidelity.
Correct.
And then take a right on
make
Blue
a
Oaks.
right.
Right, okay, so, and I know this isn't part of the project, but my concern is consistently between Fidelity and Washington, there's quite a queue. The right-hand turn lane, in my experience, onto Washington is short. And if we have a number of semis or employee vehicles kind of stacking there trying to get onto the freeway, it could potentially back up all the way. I mean, we've seen it already. We're seeing some significant issues there. Has that been given any? I know the traffic studies were mainly focused on Industrial, Freedom, and Fidelity, but not so much on Blue Oaks. The impact on Blue Oaks.
For this particular part of the project, that's correct. We were looking at the access for these sites in particular. The original site, when that came in, the original project, the traffic was analyzed at that point. I believe there was more industrial anticipated with the original project before the FBI building came in.
Okay.
And I believe that removed some of that. So it was looked at with the original project.
Would we anticipate that north, I guess, eastern corner that's not part of this project, once that is developed, that there would be some modifications to that overall intersection, turn lanes, freeway access lanes?
I think that'd have to be looked at. A lot of that's Caltrans right away.
Okay.
And so any modifications to that would have to be coordinated with
Even on
Caltrans.
the west side of the Washington intersection, that's...
Correct, up until Fidelity.
Oh, interesting, okay.
Yeah, we had to make a break in the right of way to provide that access.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Good points. Any other questions for staff?
Not so much questions, but comments to actually piggyback on that. I don't know how many times I've seen, especially going over the hill on Blue Oaks, coming down the hill, cars coming out, and then looking at the access, either to or from to intersect with Blue Oaks, and then seeing the size of this project and the various trucks coming in. It is of concern. I mean, as we stand now, 65 we know can turn into a parking lot and then back up residential traffic, or traffic within that area, back and forth. So now, adding in semi trucks or a number of them, I think that's something that really needs to be looked at from a safety standpoint as people start going over that hill, coming down that hill, and then vehicles turning out, making that right, to head out. So not so much a question, but just want to state, and for the record, the concern that may cause. I know the work that you explained for industrial, which makes sense, but I see industrial would be less of a concern than I do Blue Oaks, just because of how heavily traveled that is for families. That's all I have, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like there's a concern with potential.
I just want to add to that. As you're coming down Blue Oaks, heading towards 65 in through there, a lot of drivers are trying to figure out which lane
Yes, sir.
need to be in to get where they're going, and they're not necessarily focused on
cross traffic.
Right.
And so, yeah, I do have that concern.
And if I could, Chair, Derek, maybe you can, I'm not exactly, I mean, this may not be what we're focused on tonight, right? The site, the usage has already been approved. We're just really focused on the modification of the parking in the buildings.
So I think originally, this project was envisioned as this, and especially this portion of the project was envisioned as a, large floor plate warehouse and industrial complex. And so I think the traffic studies that Matt was referring to that were done originally with the project looked at the access into the site. And granted, the overpass, it is a difficult entry onto Blue Oaks Boulevard there. And I think that's why, the project really worked to put in signals at either end of Freedom Way in order to kind of, help alleviate some of that safety concerns. So I think, depending on the time of day, when the truck would be delivering goods or leaving the site, they would probably use Freedom Way, I would think, more often, because you do have those signalized intersections at both sides. So they could either travel north or southbound on Industrial, or, like you mentioned, exit Freedom Way onto Washington Boulevard at the signal. And the city has, full control over those signals. We can, increase the timing, those kind of things, just depending on the traffic flow and the particular point of the day that it is. So I think that was probably, the reason we looked at, providing those signalized intersections with this project.
To confirm, that original study was done in 2010.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, I was looking at the 10 and on the 14th. For the next approved modification, but a lot has changed on that side within those years. From the housing developed out there, as well as some of the commercial spaces, or retail shopping out that, bringing out other folks outside of the residential area into that area, and. Sure. Yeah. I mean,
a lot has changed. Point. Yeah, and I think another concern is access. Maybe it doesn't happen often, but you've got folks who will want to access this site coming from the east, maybe over the overpass, and what they're doing, instead of using the left turn signal at Fidelity or Freedom, they're cutting over in front of the folks coming off of 65 onto Blue Oaks on that flyover. And then going around to Industrial. My concern is a lot has changed. And while the site itself is approved for this type of project, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity here, before we move forward, to include some improvements to Blue Oaks in anticipation of, I think, increased traffic impact. I don't know if that's within this purview tonight, or if we can revisit this with more information, but right now it's a significant problem. And I just think that if we move forward with this development as is, without addressing those concerns on Blue Oaks that have definitely changed over the last 12 years, we may be jumping the gun a little bit.
I do know that, and Matt can maybe address this a little bit more, but the city is looking at improvements to Blue Oaks Boulevard, mostly to add additional lanes on the overcrossing. So it wouldn't really, I don't think, help visibility over that overcrossing, but in order to relieve, congestion on Blue Oaks, they are looking at adding another through lane. That's probably, several years out.
But what I would think, though, is adding a through lane over that overpass would actually probably carry through. Right now, it does, right? It goes down to 2,
Right, yeah.
and then you have to get to the turn. So that would potentially, and that would be one of those
that
improvements.
is
I
in
think would help.
our capital improvement program, our CIP. I think the funds are still a ways out.
Right, we're still collecting. I know there was a priority study done a couple years ago that was presented to council, and it was decided at that time to move forward with the Roseville Parkway Bridge instead of moving forward with the Blue Oaks
I remember
Bridge.
that, yep.
So the thought there was that that would help relieve some of that congestion once that's constructed, because that will give another avenue to get out to Washington from the west.
Really avoiding a lot of that congestion.
Correct.
Yeah, to
Correct.
Washington.
And so kind of pull some of that traffic off.
Do we have a better timing on that?
On the Roseville Parkway Bridge, I believe they are anticipating construction starting next year.
Okay.
I think they're hoping for completion in 2024.
I make a comment? Or
Yeah, please.
Suggestion? Am I understanding correctly that the problem you would foresee, Commissioner Brashears would foresee, is semi-trucks pulling out of Fidelity Way onto Blue Oaks Boulevard, being very slow and people coming down?
Not necessarily the speed, although that is a factor. I think it's the potential for the additional semi-trucks and the 800-plus parking spaces, just the added congestion on Blue Oaks. So not necessarily a slow truck coming out. I actually think that light there will turn red for the Blue Oaks traffic, even for a right-turning vehicle. So I'm not as concerned about that. It's just right now the queue is already back up over the railroad track overcrossing. And I'm just concerned about adding the additional volume without some improvements to that section of Blue Oaks.
And that typically is like during the 5 o'clock rush hour, I'm assuming.
Mornings, afternoons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In only the fact that, we haven't really seen any kind of an impact study done because of this project in that section.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, I would just, to jump in, sorry, Commissioner Brashears, when this project was originally came forward, we did look at the traffic with the whole project, and we did have a forecast year. I think it was probably out to 2030 at the time for our capital improvement program. So we did look at all the growth that was going to happen in the West Plan, all the growth that was going to happen in Creekview. I'm not sure about Amaruso at that time, but several of the specific plans would have been included in that, as well as growth in the region. So we did a comprehensive traffic analysis with the original project that Harsh had done at the time. And so, there was a lot of study that went into how to access this. Now, there's a lot going on at that intersection, I'll say that, like you said. But we did fairly comprehensively study what were the best ways to access this site. I think if you might have recalled, there used to be a jug handle on this property that went down to industrial, and part of the solution for the traffic for this site was to provide Fidelity Way and Freedom Way and the signalized intersections to get people off of Blue Oak safely, and also to let vehicles exit the site. And so I think there was quite a bit of analysis that went into that at the time. I know we're seeing more and more traffic, obviously, these days. But there was quite a bit of consideration that went into that original traffic study.
And thanks, Derek. I think, to be clear, I may just be expressing concerns, but this has nothing to, what we're really considering tonight is just modification of the project site, right? So the traffic concerns may be outside of the purview of what's on our agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so we're looking at a minor modification to the site to kind of reorientate the buildings. That would be the stage 1. And then the stage 2 approval is for the architecture and landscaping.
Right, so really, this isn't the opportunity
Yeah, I mean, access to the site, all those kind of things were pretty much already
correct.
set in stone.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
If I may, yes, I'm totally with you, and I definitely apologize for derailing, with my thoughts on this, because yes, it was very specific on what we are looking at. The only question that I have is with the original plans and what was proposed and the modifications that they're changing now, any of those changes, does that change how the site was going to be accessed or how they were going to leave the site? So the building locations are all the same, everything else is all the same, it's just...
Pretty much, yeah. Like we said, the buildings have changed orientation a little bit, and they've consolidated the square footage within 4 buildings instead of 10.
Okay.
But the site was always meant to handle heavy truck traffic.
Okay.
The square footages we did, they're asking to increase the square footages by, I think, 50,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a slight increase in that. It'd probably be pretty nominal in terms of trips. I don't know, Matt, if you want to comment on that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a reduction when the FBI building came in, so there was some offsets. Plus, we still haven't fully realized all the development on these parcels, right. And so as a result of that, when the next project comes in, we'll do another analysis when that comes in.
And I'll stop after. I just want for the team. This is definitely not a criticism or saying things weren't looked at. We're talking. 12 years ago, and that, again, a lot has changed in 12, so now we're looking at it through today's eyes and some of the experiences there. So this is definitely not a criticism on that. This is just bringing to light, this is what we're seeing now, 12 years later. So
yeah. Still
well done, and yeah, please take no offense to that.
All right, thank you. Great discussion, guys. Ladies. So then what I'll do now, if we're satisfied with this part of the discussion with no other additional comments, I'm going to open up the public hearing. And I'd like to invite the project representative for this item to address the commission.
Good evening, commissioners, staff. My name is Ryan Sharon with Harsh Investment Properties, and I'm here to answer any questions you have. I don't have a presentation, if that's what was expected. I'm sorry, I just flew in from Portland, literally just got off an Uber. So I apologize.
So Scarlett had given a great presentation staff for this, so she informed us of the project. We appreciate you being here. Commissioners, do you have any questions to catch him off guard since he's fresh off the plane?
So we were talking now. As it pertains to the project itself, none. What has been written there, I have no questions, Commissioner.
Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, now we'll open up the public comment period. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll now close the public comment period. And so we can open it up for any additional questions or discussions with commissioners to the applicant or to staff. I just want to reiterate, though, that this is, the project submittal is for the MPP Stage 1 and Stage 2 is what we're looking at tonight. So we really appreciate the discussion, but we are looking at MPP 1 and 2.
Right. Chair, I do just have one more question for staff, and I know I think you covered this, but the changes to the plan, did they add significant parking or reduce, stay the same? Do we have those numbers?
It was added, but I don't know the numbers offhand.
I know the 800 something was the new site, but I don't remember.
I think the only probably additional parking that they're providing is just for the additional square footage of the, of the warehouse building. So they're adding about 50,000 square feet. So, I mean, that equates to about 50 parking spaces.
Thank you, yeah. So not, I mean, out of 800.
So I think it's probably pretty nominal.
Pretty minimal, okay. I have no other questions.
Okay, yeah, the comment on parking talks about minimum 400 spaces, and there's 822 bike parking, clean air vehicles, so they did increase it, and yeah, it is based upon square footage. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? No? Okay, great. I'm now going to close the public hearing, and then I'd like to see if any one of the commissioners would like to make a motion, remembering that our item is major project permit for Stage 1 and Stage 2.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
That we consider the addendum to the Blue Oaks Commerce Center initial study and mitigated negative declaration, and adopt the 2 findings of fact and approve the major project permit Stage 1 modification subject to 10 conditions of approval, and adopt the 2 findings of fact and approve the major project permit Stage 2 subject to 93 conditions of approval. That's for item 6.2, major project permit Stage 1 modification and major project permit Stage 2 at 2200 Freedom Way. For the record, that's file PL 22-0101.
I'll second that.
All right, great. We Commissioner Pryor has made the motion, and Commissioner Randolph has seconded the motion. We need a roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Randolph.
Yes.
Commissioner Hagen-Jost.
Yes.
Vice Chair of Covington.
Yes.
Commissioner Brashears.
Yes.
Commissioner Pryor.
Yes.
And Chair Martin.
Yes, the motion is approved. There's a 10-day appeal period for this item. All right, thank you. That's it for the items. Next up is item 6.3, which is the North Industrial Plan Area Parcel CO-42, the Ivy at Blue Oaks located at 275 Roseville Parkway. For the record, file number is PL 22-0178, has been continued to the October 27th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. So that's all the items for that agenda item. So next is the Commissioner and Staff report. So do we have any reports from staff?
No formal reports tonight, just wanted to let you guys know for your calendars that we are proposing to have 2 meetings in October on the 13th and the 27th, and then also 1 meeting in November and 1 meeting in December on the first Thursday of those months, or second Thursday of those months, excuse me. So then that's all I have for tonight.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff?
No, thank you guys for indulging.
All right. Thank you, guys. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Commissioner Covington has made the motion. Commissioner Brashears has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.